Good morning, friends. I am busy in the kitchen already, and it's kind of chaos because I've never made this recipe before. A friend of ours invited us over for dinner here recently, and it was so good. I thought, I got to make this, but I got to share it with people. I can't just make something. I have to take 3 times longer and do a video of it. But I want to show you how to make this. It is, it's sausage, cheese, sage, pasta, and pumpkin. And as weird as that sounds, it's so good together. So go with me as we make something. I can't remember the name of it, but I'll put it in the description. You'll know what I'm making, so let's go. Okay, so we have our pasta to cook in this pot right here. It is in the process of being cooked right now. And I realized once I put it in there, it's an immensely huge pot and too much water to be cooking that small amount of pasta in. So I don't normally oversize my pots like this, but for some reason I was thinking, yeah, those big jumbo shells, that needs a big pot. Well, it didn't need that much, so just kind of disregard the size of this. Use whatever you think is best in your house. So this is oversized. So the name of this recipe originally is Cheesy Pumpkin and Sage Sausage Pasta Shells. Really? It's got pumpkin in it, and it's got pasta in it, it's got sausage in it, and really that's the flavors that come through. So that's what makes this so yummy altogether. And the pumpkin just makes it really funky, but when she first told me about it, I was like, oh, I've kind of been wanting to try something savory with pumpkin in it. I don't use it that much. I mean, I make a really good pumpkin soup that's savory, but I would have to say it's one of the best pasta things I've had in a while. So just different from your typical spaghetti or lasagna or something like that, or a red sauce. All right, I have my pan over a burner that's been turned on for just a bit. I'm going to brown a tablespoon of butter. Now, the browning isn't a deal breaker if you don't do it. They just say it imparts more of a nutty flavor. I don't see that. I've made cookies with it. I've browned butter. I've used non-brown butter. I really can't tell the difference, but then again, you know, I'm from the country. We just don't notice stuff like that. So maybe if you have that fine dining taste, maybe you can detect it. But me, I'm good with it. But I'm going to go ahead and follow the directions. We're going to brown the butter. Now, there's a difference in browning butter and burning butter, and that's what we want to avoid. We want to avoid burning it. So we're just going to cook this on a pretty low heat, not super low, but a little bit low heat until we see those milk solids turning a tanned color or getting darker, and then that's when our butter is good and browned. This also calls for fresh sage. I don't own any fresh sage. I don't grow sage. It's an herb that I don't have growing. And to go to the store is against my better judgment today. So I'm using dried sage. If you have fresh sage, that's great. You can use a tablespoon of fresh sage, and we're going to saute that in just a minute in this butter. But if you don't have fresh, then of course I have to Google everything just right before I turn the cameras on. I don't want to look so dumb, but really and truly I am. But I Googled it, and just like most fresh and dried herbs, you reduce it by 2/3. So 1 tablespoon of fresh equals 1 teaspoon of dried. So it's a little more compact, denser flavor. So we have dried. And if you have the crushed sage and not just fresh dried leaves, then you're going to use even less. You would have about 1/2 teaspoon. So that's what we actually have, is the rubbed sage. So I'll use, I don't know, 1/2 teaspoon to a teaspoon. I like the flavor of sage, but if you don't like the flavor of sage necessarily, if you don't want that coming through, then use less. I'm going to grab a whisk because I know that I'm going to need it later when we start adding our pumpkin to it. So I'm just going to give this a stir with my whisk while it's browning. And that's why I use a shiny pan when I'm browning the butter. If I use a dark pan, I can't tell when the milk solids are turning a different color because they're the same color as the pan. So don't use a dark pan, use a light colored pan of some kind, something shiny or something light colored. If you're new to our channel, welcome. And my name is Tanya, and this is She's At It Again, of course, like the title says, but I know I forgot to say that right off the bat, so just to clarify. And I've never had my camera up this high. It feels kind of fun having that because I don't have to worry about bumping into it or something not getting close enough. I almost feel like those retro cooking shows where they have the camera right above the food with the mirror and all that. I always think those are kind of cool. But that's the closest I could get to is putting my tripod up on the counter. So hopefully I don't need anything in that cabinet. I'm in big trouble because I can't get to it. The part that you're looking for to turn brown in browning your butter is what at this point, because it's just melted and starting to get hot, are the parts that look like little tiny specks of cheese around the edge. So they're white right now. They look like a foamy white substance. Those are the parts that's going to turn brown. So just keep an eye on those. This is my grandmother's old saucepan from years and years and years and years ago. So the bottom is not completely flat and it doesn't come in great contact with my range top. But that being said, I love this pan and I will always cook from it. And my Nana would have never made anything like this. Pumpkin is for pie and that's it. She wasn't opposed to trying new things, but she was opposed to being the one that cooked it. So somebody couldn't say, now Gladys, why did you put pumpkin in that? That's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. You know that pumpkin is used for pies. So I could just hear her talking about that. Okay, our browned bits are starting to be obvious in here. I'm hoping this picks it up, but it may be too light from the reflection, so I apologize. But it has just started turning brown. So we are going to speedy quick add some garlic to it. And we need about a tablespoon and a half of minced garlic, which is quite a bit of garlic. Now you notice how carefully I'm measuring this, which is not at all. Nice thing about this recipe is I think, and I could be wrong, this may completely turn out horrible, but I have my doubts. But a lot of this stuff you can use a little bit more, a little bit less, just depending on what you like. Okay, again, here's my ground sage. So I'm going to use between a half teaspoon and a full teaspoon. Maybe a full teaspoon. Again, I like sage. And I said ground sage. You can. It's also called rubbed sage. I'm not sure why it's called that, but those are interchangeable terms, I do believe. All right, I'm going to get a cup of milk to use in this, but we're also going to add our pumpkin to it at this point. And here's my pumpkin. I measured out 3 cups of it. So we have 3 cups in there, and this is what we're using. It took 2 cans of this pumpkin. This is just 100% pure pumpkin. Do not get pumpkin pie mix. All this is just pumpkin. So we're going to start putting that in. And with the garlic, pretty much you just want to cook that until it gets kind of clear. Again, just kind of fly by the seat of your pants and instructions on this. but just making sure you get all the ingredients in there because it is so delicious all together. And shout out to our friend Kendra for introducing us to this recipe. She's the young lady that is our daughter's age, and she invited us over to her apartment recently, and this is what she served. I brought dessert over, took dessert over, and she provided the meal, and it was fabulous. So I saw her last night at our group Bible study, and I said, oh, I'm making that pumpkin pasta sausage stuff tomorrow. And she just stopped and said, oh, that stuff's so good. So, yes, it is. To this, we're also going to add a cup of milk. Let me look at my directions again, make sure. You can use heavy cream, you can use half and half, or you can use milk. I used all my heavy cream the other day making a spinach soup, so we're going with milk. It seems like the pumpkin just really absorbs the liquid, which isn't necessarily good or bad. I'm just making an observation there. I think that's kind of neat. All right, to this, we're going to add between a half and 3/4 of a cup of chicken broth. I keep my chicken bone broth in the refrigerator in jars, and went and got a jar of that just now, and I'll probably have to get my jar opener to get it open. Maybe it needs this one. If you don't have one of these tools, I don't even know how this works other than just putting pressure around the circumference of it. But these things are great. It has kind of a rubbery finish to the center of it, the part that touches the jar. You just barely squeeze it and start turning. Okay, go get one of these. These are great. All right, I give that bone broth a little shake so this stuff that had settled to the bottom would be floating throughout. Okay, a half to 3/4 of a cup. We're going to add a few spices to this, and you're probably going to be thinking, that sounds like pumpkin pie, and it does. We're going to put nutmeg and some cinnamon in it, but the flavor just comes shining through. All right, I'm going to just go ahead and add all that. That was almost 3/4 of a cup of chicken broth. All right, to that we are going to add a teaspoon of salt. And I don't use salted butter, so I think I got just a tiny bit over a teaspoon, which is fine. And we're also going to add, let's see, a half teaspoon of cinnamon. About 1/8 of a teaspoon of fresh ground black pepper, and I just ground this up the other day. So, a tiny bit of black pepper. And a half teaspoon of ground nutmeg. See if I can get my nutmeg out of there. I got to keep stirring this because it's kind of like tomato sauce when you're cooking that. And once it starts bubbling, it doesn't just come to a gentle boil. Oh, this is what a whole nutmeg looks like. It kind of looks like a pecan, but when you grate it, it's solid on the inside. I need a half teaspoon of nutmeg. If all you have is the kind that's already ground, that's fine. Go ahead and use what you have. But if you ever start using the fresh nutmeg as opposed to the already ground up, you will probably likely never go back because it just has such a fabulous flavor to it. It's pretty indescribable. All right, that's about half teaspoon. I'll put the rest of it back into the jar. Now the last thing we want to put in our sauce ingredients is, this calls for, I think it called for brown sugar in the initial recipe, but when I rewrote it for me using it, I just kind of scribbled it down. I put on there, use honey or date syrup. I tend to like the taste of date syrup when it calls for anything like brown sugar or molasses, because this has that darker flavor to it, like molasses would, which is what brown sugar is sugar plus molasses. All right, so just a teaspoon of this. If you've never had date syrup, it is very, very interesting. It's delicious, and it tastes a lot like molasses. All right, our pasta is gently boiling over here. I'm going to drain this in just a bit and set it aside, because we still want to make our sausage filling. So I'm going to turn this burner off, set this back here, and I'm going to go drain this, and we'll be right back. This recipe calls for a cup of Italian cheese. Now, I don't know what that is. Call me dumb, but I don't know what Italian cheese is shredded. I'm guessing they sell that at the store in a pre-shredded form. And if you are not a new viewer to this channel, you know I do not buy pre-shredded cheese of any form at all. So I'm just going to guess. We're going to go with some mozzarella and some Romano and some Parmesan. But I only need a cup of it, so surely to goodness it could include one or more of these. So just a little bit of each of these. Shred our Parmesan and our Romano a bit finer. Let's see where oh, there's that side. Thought maybe I missed it. I just went past it twice. All right, that's enough Parmesan. And now my favorite, which is the Romano. All right, that's a good looking pile of cheese. Make sure I don't have any hidden on my countertops. You'd be surprised at the things that get lost because of the pattern in this. Okay, let's go over and cook some sausage and spinach. We'll add this to it. All right, we have our sausage, our skillet heating up. We're going to put our sausage in. I don't remember if I did a video of this or not, but you can look at this. This is how I made my last thing of sausage. This was a little over a pound of sausage, and I added all the dry spices and ingredients to it and put it in a zip top bag, squeezed all the air out, rolled it flat, and then took my plastic bench scraper and just kind of pressed down some lines in there so I can actually just pull off sausages as I need it. And what I did was I broke off 3 of those and put them in my container in the freezer. That's how I keep my sausages in the freezer. But these are just handy dandy. I mean, look at that. Who doesn't want a square piece of sausage? All right, so we're going to put all this sausage in the skillet. We're going to cook this up because it calls for a pound of sausage. Right before I went to bed last night, I took that package out of the freezer, took the 3 pieces off, put them in a different container for the freezer, and then put this in the refrigerator to thaw so I wouldn't have quite so much time cooking it this morning. And that worked out well. It was perfectly thawed. I would normally use my shiny stainless skillet for this, but guess what? It has a reflection on it in the camera, and you can't really see what I'm doing. So get out my old favorite cast iron skillet, which I do use a lot, but I would normally pull out the shiny one. Just trying to spare you from watching the video with sunglasses on. So I drained our pasta shells and I have them sitting behind me on the counter, but I want to show you this package that they came out of. I only used about half of what was in this package. It calls for using 20 jumbo pasta shells. Well, this is more than 20 in here, but I want to show you this. And you might be thinking, if you've watched our show or watched our channel much, you know I use a lot of organic products, and this is not organic. I cannot find organic jumbo shells. I just can't, and I don't know how to make the shell shape in pasta. I could make something flat. I could probably make a different shape like gnocchi or something like that if really pressed, but I can't make a shell. I'm sorry. But here's the key to it. I'm going to show you what the back of this package says. Hopefully you can see this. Let's see. Right here. It says made in Italy. And I look for that. And the reason I look for that is because genetically modified organisms or GMOs are not allowed in Italy. The general public said, we don't want that here. No, don't start that in this country. We allow it here in the U.S., but not in Italy. So if the pasta is produced in Italy, then I'm good with it because it's not GMO. And whether you feel good, bad, or indifferent about it, that's just a fact of why I feel comfortable about buying it if it says produced in Italy. I still had rather have organic, but if I can't find it, that's what I have to go with. So thank you for buying products that are produced in Italy as well. Because the U.S. isn't the only place that produces good stuff. Just, it's a fact. We're good, but we're not exclusive. This recipe also calls for 4 cups of fresh spinach. Guess what? I used all my spinach the other day making soup, and I don't have any fresh spinach left, but you know me, and if I have fresh spinach left over and I know I'm not going to use it, I immediately put it in a freezer bag, press all the air out of it, and preserve it that way. So, luckily, I had frozen spinach. And this is about 4 cups worth. Those big giant tubs of fresh spinach, that's about 10 cups, and that's about a pound. So I figured about half a pound is about 5 cups, a little bit less than that. But again, this recipe, you can go either way, a little bit less, a little bit more. But I figured a little bit less than a pound, or a little bit less than a half a pound is about 4 cups of spinach. So again, I Googled that too. I have to on all my measurements, and like how much dry peas equal, you know, how many cups of cooked peas does a pound make, and things like that. I'm always Googling stuff like that, and thank goodness that there's that avenue that we can look at and figure out the information we needed. As challenged as I am when it comes to technology, I am so grateful at least I have that resource available to people that are challenged like me. So fresh spinach is, I mean, it's a must when you're using it for something like a salad, but when it's a soup or something that's going to cook, if you have fresh spinach and you've frozen it, pressed all the air out and just have it in the freezer, seriously, it's going to get cooked anyway. It's not like you're going to have this beautiful fresh spinach leaf sticking out of something. So it is all the same. Just be sure you write how much it weighs down on the package when you start out, just for time's sake when you go to need something to cook with later on. I actually used my digital scale to weigh some of that out because I had a little bit more than what was needed. Okay, the instructions to this also says once you've cooked your sausage, drain off all the fat. Well, guess what? When you make your own out of the recipe that I've given instructions to on this channel, you really don't have any fat left in the skillet. That in the bottom is not fat. That's actually just juices from it, and if I cook this long enough, it'll just dry up. So we're not dealing with a lot of fat content here in this. But if you buy store-bought bulk sausage, you will have an immense amount of fat. Very little meat and a lot of fat, but not if you make your own sausage. And we will try to link the video for the bulk pork sausage in the description. I say try. I don't try anything. My husband does it also. He will link the video to the sausage recipe in the description. I'll leave it all up to him. I just cook. That's all I do. All right, we're going to go ahead and put our spinach in there. Mine's still kind of frozen in a big clump, so that'll thaw as we go. To this, we're going to add, so right now in this skillet, we have a pound of sausage that we've cooked. We have 4 cups of fresh spinach, or a little bit less than half pound of frozen spinach. And we're going to add 15 ounces of ricotta, but this was the only size container they had at the store when I went. So we have 32 ounces, so I'm going to add about half of this in there. Normally, the ricotta section is full of those smaller containers. I go in there, and I'm looking around like, what happened? Luckily, there was an associate there, and they told me that it was on back order or something, so I just bought the big one. It's not like I can't find something else to use ricotta for. Maybe we'll make a cheesecake or something. This also calls for adding a half cup of our grated cheese over there, but it also calls for adding half cup of our pumpkin sauce. So I'm just going to dip about half cup of that out. Most of that liquid you see in there probably came from the spinach because, again, it's not like it's dehydrated or anything. It's just frozen. But I'm going to let this cook to where a lot of that moisture goes out. I'm going to turn the heat down and just let it simmer for a while. Put some of our cheese in there. I'm going to be a little stingy. I'm not going to put quite half cup in there because I want a lot of it for the top of that. I think that'll be good. The recipe also said if you don't have the jumbo shells, you can also use manicotti shells. So cook those, and they're like long tubes. You can stuff those with this mixture. But honestly, if you just put down lasagna noodles, put this on top, layer the pumpkin in it, put the cheese on the top, I think we're still talking about the same product here. Same flavor, just different presentation. All right, I'm going to turn this burner off. I'm going to scoot this over to the other side and let it cool for just a bit, and then we will start stuffing our shells in just a minute. So we'll be back. Okay, back again. I was going to put a coconut oil, a little bit of coconut oil in the bottom of this, but my decision was no, because this is going to have the pumpkin in it. That's what's going to be our bottom layer. So we're going to pour all our pumpkin mixture in the bottom of this. That smells super garlicky. No ticks or vampires for us today. Woo! That's going to be super good. Okay, so here's how it goes. We are going to stuff these shells with our sausage mixture. Let me find just the right spoon. Like that. How pretty does that look? Looks like a little cup of goodness. And the fun part is getting them all situated in here where they'll fit. And again, it calls for 20 of these, and I'm thinking, really? I just don't know if it's 20 exactly, but it could be. I mean, that looks like about the size my pan would fit. But if all this doesn't fit in 20 shells, I am dumping it over the top. And it says to cook extra shells in case some of them break too, so that doesn't mean they're not usable, it just means they're not as pretty. So yeah, this might be 20, so 5 rows of 4. That could very well be. It's not even 11 o'clock in the morning right now, it's a Monday morning. But I'll let this cool off a bit. I'll put it in the fridge and heat it up for dinner tonight. Our guest will arrive this afternoon and be here for dinner. So I'll make a salad to go with this, and that pretty much makes a complete meal, I would think. I think this could actually use a larger pan, a larger casserole dish, and I think the recipe, because they used store-bought sausage, you lost so much of your product in fat that you've discarded most of your food right there. So if you go with the homemade version of sausage that we're going to link the recipe to, it's going to make more. It just is. You can tell I probably have twice as much filling as what would go in 20 of these pasta shells. Maybe that means I'll just have to make it again soon. All right, let's see if I can nestle some more shells in here. At least one right there. I don't know. That looks pretty good. What do y'all think? 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I have 20 shells in there, but I still have way more filling than what goes on 20 shells. So what I might do is just plop some of this on there and then take the half that we did not use. I'll put it in something and put it in the freezer, and we'll make this again, and that way I don't even have to make this part of it. All I have to do is mix up my pumpkin mixture and just grate a little bit more cheese and then make shells for it. So I think we're set on that. Okay, this smells really fabulous. I would say if you have a family that has picky eaters in it, you might just hit the jackpot on this one right here, because if you just sit down and eat and say nobody's talking, nobody's asking questions, nobody's getting any information, tell them to sit down, be quiet, and eat, I think they would love it. They might be a little suspicious, but as soon as you say pumpkin, people just conjure up ideas of a dessert, I guess. I know I do. Okay, I'm going to get my hands washed. We're still going to reserve or use that part we didn't use in that. Put it in a container and use it for later. All right, we'll sprinkle our cheese over the top. I just had an idea. Maybe I could stuff some of those shells with that, freeze those on a baking sheet, which I'm just dreaming because I can't really fit a baking sheet in my freezer. But if I could freeze those individually, and then all I'd have left to do is make my pumpkin for the bottom of it and just plunk those frozen shells on there, let them thaw, and then bake it off. Ooh, that would be perfect. If I had room in my freezer. I don't know. I'll look in the little tiny freezer in my sunroom and see if I have room out there. All right, so for now, I'm going to let this cool off. I'll put it in the fridge to chill. This is what it looks like in its uncooked state. And then I'll try to video some footage of when I take it out of the oven and serve it up. So thanks for watching, and we look forward to sharing something again with you real soon. But stay tuned, and I'll let you see what this looks like before we eat it. Hopefully. See ya.